Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Experiment Nation, Ruben here. Listen, you guys know how much I love the short-term rental space. It's been one of actually my favorite guests I've had on my show, especially as an investor myself. Now, as an investor and digital marketer, I can tell you that in 2021, what is most important for every host is to establish and build your own brand. See, while Airbnb.com and Booking.com and Expedia, which we call OTAs, are good, they're not necessarily going to take your business to the next level. Or if it currently is, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. That is because the majority of hosts are not establishing their own platform, their own websites where your guests can book directly through you. If you understand anything about business and marketing, it is the ability to control a list, to have control of that list. You do not have that kind of access and control when you're relying on other OTAs. So the best and easiest way to do this is by working with Boostly. See, Boostly, Mark actually have had him in the lab in episode 130. And the thing is, they built their website specifically for folks in the short-term rental space. And they built that on a WordPress website. See, 64% of all websites in the world are powered by WordPress. While the PMSs that you may have currently are offering you free sites, they're not built on WordPress. Now, Boostly also works with your existing PMS. And it doesn't matter if you're a host of one property or 100. They can start anywhere from 99 pounds. They've helped over 600 clients worldwide. And it is so important that you tap into what they're offering and schedule a consultation call with Mark and his team at Boostly so that you can start leveraging and building your platform so you can start getting direct bookings to skyrocket your business. It's really important that you do this and start building your own brand and that you're in control of your direct bookings for your business. So if that's the case, make sure you book a call at boostly.co.uk/epic. That's boostly.co.uk/epic. And make sure that you schedule a call with Mark and his team at Boostly so that you can start getting your direct bookings for your short-term rental business. We'll see you on the other side. Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today, I have the pleasure of sitting with Jack Bosch, aka the Land Guy, as they call him. And obviously, this gentleman needs no introduction, but I'm going to give it to him because those of you might not know who he is, and you should. Look, in the lab, we have a lot of interesting folks who come in, and we're very big on having practitioners. And I'm so excited because I do believe that Jack is an embodiment of a true experimenter, and there's so many different verticals that he's in and part of real estate. I'm dying to find out which one came first, but just to level set, since 2002, if I'm accurate, he's really been diving into a lot of different niches in the real estate, over 4,000 transactions in real estate, which I'm so excited to find out if they're all land flips, if they're all different. And then obviously now he's built an incredible empire when it comes to even helping other students get to do what he's done with his home, with his family, and his portfolio of rental homes, apartment buildings. I mean, the list is endless. And we were just talking offline of the success rate that he's having with his students as well. And of course, he is the author of the Forever Cash, of course, because he believes in dropping lots of knowledge and sharing it with the people, his successes. But look, one of the things I asked offline when I had, Jack, and I said, look, Jack, what is it that we're going to talk about? There's so much to do. But before we talk about all those things that he's accomplished, first of all, welcome, Jack, to the lab as the true lab practitioner that you are. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, and thank you for this wonderful over-the-top introduction here. I'm all blushing here, so thanks a lot.
Cool. Well, no blushing need because you've done the work, so we're going to get right to it. But I got to ask you, what gets you out of bed?
What brings me out of bed at this point in my career is a few things. Number one, it's the fact that we're changing lives in our educational side of the business. Like in our land profit generator, land coaching business, Like we just got off our call with our coaches today, and there's like an avalanche of student successes just in the last 2 weeks, like dozens of students having their first deal. And so that gets me excited because I know that what we're doing is leaving a legacy and changing the trajectory of the life for so many people. The second thing that gets me alive is deals. I just love deals. I mean, I can literally, like, whether it's syndication, land deals, like I look at any deals all the time, and I just love not crunching the numbers, but they crunch themselves kind of in my mind. After 4,000 of them, they kind of like come together. It's like, oh, I could do this with that, that with that. And I think when my wife and I ask ourselves that exact same question, when we kind of reach certain financial goals in our life, that change your options of what you can do for the rest of your life. In other words, when we're basically reached our number, when we reach the point where we're like, okay, so what do we do now for the rest of our lives? What came very, very clear is those things, or those two things, like changing people's lives and doing deals, is what we're going to do until the last breath of our lives, because I just can't imagine doing anything else.
I love that. Well, first of all, you mentioned that you were blushing because in the intro. Well, you're going to be blushing a lot on this show because it's a very different format. We like to dive in deep and we don't hold back. Let me ask you a question. You brought this on yourself. You said you came up with a number. We don't need to know what that number is, but how does one who's listening come up with a number? I think this will help us get a little context. Okay. How do you come up with your number? Are you a lifestyle guy? Or you just throw it out there in the universe? How do you come up with it?
So we come up with it following actually a methodology, and we're pretty systematic kind of people. I'm from Germany originally, not an engineer, but I do have a business degree and so on. And just overall, I think just we love building systems. So we built a system that helps us to get to success, and we're cash flow people. So we love cash flow. So first of all, so it's, for us, it's not a dollar figure. Some people say, like, I asked my former office manager one time, quite a few years ago, it's like, hey, what's your number? She's like, $10 million. I was like, how do you come up with that? Well, I figured that's enough for me to live on for the rest of my life. It's like, okay, but it really means nothing. Right? It means nothing. Could be 1 million, could be 3 million. Well, for me, we put it together into a certain kind of plans. And we learned that from somebody out there. I don't remember who taught it to us, one of the many books I read. But basically, we set up what we call a security plan, a comfort plan, and a luxury plan. So what does that mean? A security plan means that if we have enough like ducks in a row or assets, we're cash flow again. We love real estate, so we invest in cash flowing assets. That could be notes, that could be rental houses, that can be multifamily, whatever it is. So like if we invest in enough of those that the cash flow covers the very basic expenses that we're okay with living, meaning like a starter home, one car, vacations to, I don't know, driving to Lake Tahoe instead of flying to Bora Bora, right? So like things like that. If we do that, if we have enough cash flow for the rest of our life to live in that level, we have accomplished our security plan. Means we're good. So because we realized it was, whatever it was, 2009, we realized we were multimillionaires, but we did not have any cash flow. Because we're multimillionaires. Well, we had a lot of cash flow, but not cash flow that actually lasts for your lifetime.
So like, being liquid, in other words.
Being liquid, but not necessarily cash flow. So in other words, by that time, we had flipped like 2,000 pieces of land, made millions of dollars. We sell a lot of the land that we sell with seller financing. So we created cash flow. So we created over $70,000 a month in passive income. But that passive income would all end within 3, 5, 7, 10, 15 years, depending on how long the notes were. This cash flow would end. What we had not created is generational wealth that lasts into our every year. Let's say if I turn 100 years old, and let's say in the last 10 years, I'm not doing that well anymore. I don't want to have to flip more land to maintain my nice lifestyle that I have at that point of time, right? That's where I see a lot of people do wrong. They're in their 30s and they blow all the money they make. And then because they think it's going to last, it's going to go on forever. And it may go on forever, but often it doesn't. So we are a little bit more conservative thinkers. We basically, let's take the money and turn that into assets that spit out cash flow for the rest of our lives, for the rest of our daughter's life, and for the rest of our daughter's children's lives. And she's only 13, so she's not going to have children, hopefully, for a long time, right? But because otherwise I come with a gun here. So like with any boyfriend show up like there, you know what I mean? So
he's not playing around, guys. We got the international foundation here.
That's exactly right. So basically we set up that plan that says we got to take the cash that we make and the cash flow which we make from more short and midterm cash flow sources, enroll that into another asset class. In this case, we started with single family homes and then expanded to apartment complexes and commercial and things like that. And then gradually accomplish those goals. So the security goal is those minimum expenses. Comfort goal is a comfortable home. Like you have that nice 5-bedroom, 3-bath home with a Mercedes in the garage and perhaps a second car. And you do take nice vacations and things like that, but it's not crazy rich lifestyle. It's like upper middle class lifestyle. And then the third one is the luxury plan. And the luxury plan is really open-ended, but it starts at the point that you can take off and travel throughout the world for 6 weeks. And when you come home, your bank account doesn't have a dent in it. When you come home, you're in the same financial situation that you were before, in a positive sense, in a good financial situation that you can have if you want the Lambo or the Ferrari or things like that. And you can basically live whatever lifestyle you want to live. And again, it's open to the top. There's like obviously no limits. People can do crazy stuff. So with that said, we put those in place and we started chipping away at them. And when we reached our definition of the luxury plan, which we moved into a dream home, like a 5,000 square foot semi-custom home built home that we designed, right? When we had the pool built, when we had the BMW X5, when we did 6-week trips around the world, or not around the world, but through Europe, when we had all of these things in place, that's when we realized we have hit our number. Now we're not done. Obviously, there's more things in life to do, but we're now not doing it for the money anymore. Not that we really ever did, but the money is just a side effect of the activity you do, because financially you're at the level that you want to be. And in our world, we have assured that we will be at that level for the rest of our lifetime, no matter what happens.
I'm really glad I asked that, because I haven't really heard anybody define it that way. And I think it's important because what you said is based on your terms. And that's really key, because, living in California versus living in Texas is going to be that comfort goal. That number may be different. And I think sometimes you throw those numbers around $10 million. Well, $10 million might not get you that house that you want in California, but it might in, who knows, Midwest somewhere. Right. And so I think that in itself, it's so interesting to see how you're wired in your life, because I think it does start at home, or even in your mindset, it sounds like. And you said you're an engineer, but you're business driven. So give us a little bit, just because I want to get right into this, because you actually, you talked about it. And I want to, ask you this question. But before I do, as far as the mindset goes, right? You came to America, and you from what you just told me, you had a business background. What was the first experience being here, and how did you say, okay, this is going to be the engine? What was that?
Well,
what was the transition?
First of all, so I came to this country in 1997, basically with 2 suitcases, a bunch of student debt, and a student visa to do 1 more year of college, get an American MBA. So that's it, and a pretty normal, nothing fancy school. In the Midwest, actually in Illinois, 5 hours outside of Chicago. We got a master's of business administration. That does not mean that you're a businessman. It just means you have a piece of paper that says you took in a bunch of classes and you at least understand the basic terminology of business. Every business school out there grooms you to become an employee, right? So I think now in the last few years, there's entrepreneur classes popping up, but there was not even an entrepreneur class in that school being offered to anyone. So I did not have any thoughts whatsoever about becoming self-employed, starting our own company and so on. Instead, I wanted to do what people do, is build the American dream, right? And the American dream is what? You get a house, you have a car, right? You take a vacation, you get married, you have kids, and you work 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year for 40 years, and then you retire and hopefully your retirement money is enough. Well, that's at least what I realized very quickly, that that's what the American definition of the American dream was. And I realized very quickly that's not my definition of the American dream. Again, it's all about what is yours. I was like, I'm a natural contrarian in a way that I question things very easily, to the detriment of my parents when I grew up, right? Because they're like, do that. It's like, why? It doesn't make any sense, right? Yeah. And so like, because I say so. It's like, okay, good, let's do it. No, I love my parents. They're wonderful. But the point is, so when I realized that everyone is going, that 3 years into the job, I had more debt than I ever had. I had less freedom than I ever had. I worked harder than I ever worked. And I had nothing to show for in my bank account. I realized there's something wrong with the definition of the American dream. There's something wrong with that. It's like it's consumer based. It is based on financial institutions and all the different lobbying companies pushing you into a certain path, that you gotta get into credit card debt to have to buy the big ring for the engagement, which of course I did, right? That you gotta get the big wedding that you take 10 years to pay off, right? That you gotta get the school debt that it takes you 20 years to pay off. You gotta keep up with the Joneses. You gotta upgrade your house, go to the limits of what you can do, and all these different things that we all take for granted as normal, right? Like, oh, I got a raise. We can afford a bigger house. Let's go for that. And then we're like, no, we lived in our starter home until we were multiple times millionaires, and we drove our old Geo Prism that was falling apart until I crashed it. I mean, I just bumped somebody at 3 miles an hour, which made the car crash, which basically made it a total because it was worth nothing. And then we upgraded. Once we have reached certain goals, we're going to upgrade it. So to answer your question, again, from a mindset point of view, I didn't come with a business mindset. I came with a business school education, and not like an elite one, just a normal one. And I realized that both my wife, she also has a degree in that, in finance. And we both realized after a couple of years, this is not what we want to do. We're going to be stuck in this rut for the next 40 years. And that is not our picture of retirement, of how the world should look like for us. Yeah. So we changed. We basically started looking around, and we stumbled into real estate, and we ended up developing a land flipping method and scaling that, and that was got us our freedom.
Okay, so that's what I want to get right into it, because we talked about, the security, the comfort, the luxury plan, and one of the things, the reason why when I introduced you, I said you're an embodiment of an experimenter. I'm assuming that you must have tried a few things at once. But if you have not, if you went straight for the land, I would like to know why and how you saw that opportunity.
No, we actually did. We actually tried all kinds of stuff. We never, we stumbled into land. It was a pure coincidence. So we looked at all kinds of business models, and we found real estate, and it sounded attractive, right? Saw the infomercials, saw the big checks. It was like, okay, if they can do it, we can do it. Because one of the defining factors, I think, about Michelle and I is, and she's not just my wife, she's actually, and she's an immigrant from another country too. She's from Honduras, Central America. We've started this together. She knows this as well as I do. She designed all the processes. But the thing that defines us is that we always try to, we always question things, but then we always, we don't think that we're any smarter than anyone else, but we also don't think that we are less smart than anyone else. And I think there's a lot of people that think that they're stupid. A lot of people that think that they're less smart than somebody else, that I can't do that, I'm not as smart. And I think you got to put that out of your head, because you're not less smart than anyone else. You're also not smarter than anyone else. So when I see somebody do something, what it means to us is, what if they do it, I can do it, because I'm not less smart than they, and they're not smarter than me. So I can figure this out if they figured it out, right? So based on that understanding of the world, we're just like, okay, if they can get the checks, we can get the checks. So then we started reality, and reality means it's like you get beat up. It doesn't work that easy, right? So we found ourselves getting a house under contract and estimating everything wrong and not being able to sell it. So we had to back out of the contract.
This was a wholesale deal?
That was a wholesale deal of a triplex that needed everything. But we knew nothing. Because like we were like, when you come from another country, you not only is your English not yet as good, but you also don't know the terminology of an industry. So when somebody started talking to me about drywall, I was like, yeah, it looks dry, right? Absolutely. Yeah. And they started talking to me about 2x4s and 2x6s. And it's like, what is that? And then I literally had to I realized that it's the pieces of wood. They talked to me about a deed. I thought like, what, a good deed, bad deed? What do you mean? Like, what do you want me to do? Yeah. So we had to learn the vocabulary like from scratch. And obviously we didn't know how to estimate the kitchen repair, bathroom repair, electric repair, foundation repair, roof repair, mold remediation, all this kind of stuff. None of it. And that triplex needed all of that. So we got everything wrong. As a result, we put under contract on the wrong price. As a result, nobody bought it. As a result, we backed out. Then we had our first failure at hand, right? We're like, okay, at least it was a cheap failure because we got the deal by driving for dollars, driving through neighborhoods and writing down addresses of houses that were boarded up and so on. But it was like, okay, we failed. What do we do now? So then we come across tax liens and tax deeds, and we failed there. Or actually, we succeeded, but we also failed. We bought tax liens, but they were paid off 3 weeks later, and we got $3.82 in interest. We're like, okay, well, that's not the way to go. I understand you can make money with tax liens, but in order to make money with tax liens, you got to buy them first, which means you have to have a bunch of money first. And we didn't have that either. So then we attended tax deed auctions, and we were outbid like immediately because we only went there with $3,000. And guess what? There were 3 lots that had minimum bids of $1,000 each. So it's like, okay, we're going to get one of them, but they all ended up at $15,000 to $20,000. Yeah. But then what happens?
And Jack, I'm so sorry. Are you, when you're doing these, as I call them experiments, are you doing these simultaneously, or are you just, okay, that didn't work, on to the next one? Just from a process.
We did it sequentially. We took 3 years of failing because every time we're like, screw that, let's go back to our jobs, and we just focus on the job. And then within 2-3 months, we're like, man, this sucks. No, I don't want to do that forever. So let's look at this again. Let's dig a little deeper. Let's find something else. Let's look at something else. So we wasted 3 years back then to find something. And then what happens is that we came across this tax lien and tax deeds, as I mentioned, and we realized, though, what still fascinated us is that there is hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of people around, hundreds of thousands of people around the country that for one reason or the other do not pay their property taxes. Now, there is tax deed and tax lien auctions every single day of the week somewhere in the United States because there's over 3,000 counties, and some of them do them monthly and so on. So we were like, how come these people don't pay their property taxes? And then we had an idea because we attended the auction and we failed. We attended the other auction and we failed. We says like, well, what if we can find out who these people are, and what if we send them a letter? So we grabbed a list of like 400 people who owed property taxes, and instead of attending the auction, we send them a letter. We said like, hey, would you be interested in selling your property? And they started calling us back. Now at the beginning, not many, just a few. And then we optimized the letter more and more and more and more and more until like droves of them called us back. And every single one of them that called us had a piece of land for sale. And it was a piece of land, not a house. It was like, what do we do now? What do we do with this land stuff? So we wanted to be super careful. So the first guy that called us, one of the first guys that called us, we figured out the property was worth $8,000, and we offered him $400 for the property. Because like, hey, worst case, we can sell that thing for $1,000 to somebody, right? Worst case, like our next vacation is scrapped, our next trip to Vegas is scrapped, but worst case, we lose $400, but we can afford to lose $400. We can't afford to lose a $50,000 rehab budget, right? So $400, made the offer, he accepted it. And we went up to the property. It was a couple of hours from Phoenix, where we live. And we put a sign on the property. The neighbor comes across and literally buys it right on the spot, offers us $4,000 for that property. And we're like, oh my God, what's going on? We shook hands, we agreed it. We drove back home. We faxed them back then still, or emailed him a contract. He signed it. 10 days later, we closed it, and we had made $4,000 out of $400. And we're like, well, that's cool. We didn't even need to fix anything. We didn't need to estimate any repairs. We didn't even need to deal with any kind of tenants, toilets, and termites, as we call it now. We didn't have to do all of that stuff. So we went right at it, and more and more. 2 weeks later, we got a 40-acre parcel for $500, sold it for $10,000. then go on and on and on. Fast forward 10 months later, our debt was paid off, our cars were paid off, our credit card debts, our school debt was paid off. We had a year's worth of living expenses on the sideline. Our green card had arrived, because before we couldn't even quit, because we're in the process as immigrants getting to the green card process. We got our green card and we quit our jobs, and 8 months after that, we were millionaires. That's how fast. So why after, but yeah, every time it was land. So after 10, 12 land deals, we're like, screw houses, forget about houses. Like, who wants to go visit a house and estimate repairs? Yeah. And let's just focus on land only, because it's so much simpler. And you flip them the same way. And plus you can easily flip them with seller financing and get cash flow. Seller carryback.
I love that. There's so many gems that you left in there as you're saying that, because one is, let's take a step back. Like, it's literally implementation and consistency. And obviously you talked about the 3 years that it took to, what I would call is an investment into your craft, right?
True. Yes,
but then what's really, fascinating about, this is, it's usually not where we think. Your success is a byproduct of the actual action that you take. And there's so many gems that you left. One is start where you can, right? You said we could afford to lose $400. Let's do that, right? And I think a lot of people sometimes cap themselves off as, hey, I can't get into it because I just can't get in. Well, where can you get in? Where can you start investing, right? How can you start getting into the action? Not the analysis paralysis, not the envisioning, but the actual action piece. And then the other part, the other barrier, which I love, is the one where you overcame. Some people would say, it's not for us, right? The first time didn't work out. But then that persistence that it took. And I really want to echo that, because I think that's really important. As you say these things, like, these are, do not take that lightly. These are gems. And then what's fascinating is that wasn't even your strategy going into it. It was a byproduct. So let's just level set for the listeners. If you're not familiar with tax deeds, etc., just because we're problem solvers, can you help define what problem you're solving for those people who are not paying taxes, just to give us some good context as to what you were actually solving at that moment and why you were able to actually get properties as the byproduct?
Yeah, and not just at the moment, we continue to do that. Just now, we don't even focus on tax delinquent properties anymore. 90% of our deals, plus more than 90% of our deals, are properties that are free and clear, owned by the owners for many, many years. But the reasons why they want to get rid of those properties, their problem is the following. Number one, in some cases, about a third of our cases, they have inherited the property. And an heir doesn't want a piece of land. An heir wants money, right? They want to liquidate that as fast as possible. On top of it, land or any real estate comes with property taxes. And particularly land is usually not income generating if you hold on to it. A house, you can have a rental house and they pay you $1,200 and then you put $200 aside to pay property taxes. You still have $1,000 if it's free and clear. That's all good. But on land, you now have a piece of land that you bought sometime, and every year the bill comes and you have to pay property taxes. You're just sick and tired of paying those property taxes. Right? Then in some cases, the people got them through divorces. They came into the husband, but went with the wife, or the other way around. And she doesn't want that piece. She doesn't like, well, it was assigned to me. Now I got something that on top of it, I have to pay property taxes. Or the heirs again, the heirs get it. And now they have something that they have to pay property taxes. They don't want to keep paying that. They want to get rid of it, right? They want to sell it. Or some people bought it, but their life plans changed. So they wanted to move down to Texas from Arkansas, from Michigan or so, or from Minnesota. And now they decided to stay up there because their grandchildren are born. And now they have this lot far away that they perhaps even listed with a realtor. But realtors, 90% of all realtors don't have a clue how to list a piece of land. So they literally put an ugly picture up there and then put it up there and hope that somebody buys it. And that's just not how it happens. Listing land is not difficult, but it's a different thinking way. It's a different way of thinking. So so bottom line is there's all these different reasons why these people just don't want the property anymore. And they literally, sometimes they just need cash. They're just like, I just need a few $1,000s. It's a $50,000 property. You offer them 10 grand for the property. They're like, yep, that's exactly what I needed to finally buy myself that new car. Or if they're business oriented, they need the 10 grand for another investment that will go up. and they don't mind giving you a $40,000 discount on a $50,000 property. So because we buy these properties for about 5 to 40 cents on the dollar. So so all these reasons are reasons why people who don't want these properties anymore, or another word for don't want their property anymore, they have a problem. The problem is they need money. The problem is they don't want the property anymore. The problem is they have to pay property taxes and don't want to anymore. The problem is they got a piece of land instead of money as an inheritance and they want to get rid of it. The problem is they have a piece of land out of their divorce that now costs them property taxes. They don't want that anymore. And often it's a combination of these kind of things that really then makes them even more motivated. We call them actually not even motivated sellers. We call them the non-wanters, because they're just done with it. They have the garage sale mentality. They're like, why does somebody give a $1,000 bicycle mountain bike at a garage sale away for $100? Because the garage needs to be empty. It needs to be gone. I sold a piano for $1 to whoever on Craigslist. It's like, whoever comes picks that thing up because we're moving. Whoever picks it up first gets it for $1. Now it was only worth like $500, but I gave away $499 because I needed to have the garage be empty. Right?
Wow.
It's the same thing. People do that same thing with properties all day long.
So you're removing these headaches and you started by mailing. How has this strategy evolved today where, you know, before you're mailing, they're coming to you? Has it stayed the same, or has a different strategy now that you understand that people are raising their hands and saying, hey, I need to get rid of these lots or these lots? Yeah. How are they getting rid of them, and how are you able to meet that demand?
Well, so the process is actually still almost the same. Our direct mail method still works. Our direct method gets still great results. We continue having fantastic results with our method. And what has changed is a little bit more of the selling process of everything here. And whereas the selling process is much more online now than it was back then. Back then, you would put little ads in the newspaper and you would sell a bunch of properties through newspaper ads and so on. Now it's all done virtual online. It's all done. We use websites like Facebook groups, Facebook Marketplace, Zillow, Redfin, Land.com. Those are all websites. Most of them are actually for free. Land.com costs a little money to list the property there, but we put our properties out there and people find them, they contact us, and then it's all done via email, text messages. Like we sold the property last week where somebody just texted us, hey, can I buy this property? He's like, yep. Okay, and then we send them a link. They paid by credit card for it. Even we allow them to do the down payment by credit card, and we never talk to that seller, never talk to that buyer, often never talk to the seller. It's all outsourced, automated. Like the entire process is like pretty much hands off. We have students that do 100 deals a year alone as a one person show, and they're doing it in about 3-4 hours a day. So this is also very important. This is really because there's less tentacles involved, because you don't have to, like, even if you do virtual house wholesaling, for houses, you still got to coordinate for somebody to go into the house to estimate repairs.
Yeah.
Right. With our method, we haven't looked at a single piece of property since the year 2007.
Oh my gosh. So this is fascinating. So talk to me, you know, the next question I'm going to ask you, Jack, is all land created equal? Like there's one side, you're in the middle, and I know where you're going to say, I'm very curious to hear how it can differ, because there's one side where there's people, hey, get rid of my land, but you might look at it and say, you know what, it's not actually interesting. What makes a land interesting or a lot interesting more than the other?
All right, so we a great question. Land is not all created equal. There's many different kinds of land that you can flip. The 3 kinds of land that we flip are the following, and I tell you the reasons why. And the reason why they're interesting is because they have a built-in demand. They're kinds of properties that people want. Like, so do I want to flip the really difficult looking commercial property in the outskirts of town that's been on the market for 20 years and nobody was able to buy because you can't really do much with it? No, right? That's not my property. But I want to flip 3 kinds of properties. Number 1, it's the properties in the city called infill lots. Basically, you think about a street, 35 houses, 3 empty lots, house value is $400,000. That lot is worth $80,000 right there. You put on a contract for 40, a little bit more than our typical thing, but you pick up the phone, call 3 builders in the area. The second or third one will buy that property for $65,000 from you the next day, right? So you make $25,000 on there on the deal without you seeing the property, right? So the second kind of property is in the outskirts of town. So you think about a bigger city, outskirts where development ends here, just outside of there, anywhere from a few minutes to perhaps half an hour outside, depending on the population growth. That's interesting for 2 buyers. Number one, it's the future retiree. Future retiree is somebody that realizes in their 50s usually, they realize that at the house prices where they are right now and at the rent prices where they are right now, and at the savings amount that they have, which usually is not much, like 70% of the United States has like almost no savings, they're not going to be able to retire in style in the same sorry. They're not going to be able to retire with the same luxuries or the same lifestyle that they live right now. So they're starting to look like, what do I do? And what they can do is they can move outside of the city where they can get a $30,000 lot and pay that off over the next 10 years, perhaps in monthly installments, then get a mobile home on there or buy a little house on there, put a manufactured home on there, put a cabin on there, or a smaller house on there. And now for perhaps a combined $100,000, they have a place that is pretty much free and clear, or that they have a very, very small mortgage on, and they can live on their Social Security, right? So that's very interesting to them. The second kind of buyers actually came up last year, the COVID buyer, I call them. The COVID buyers are fantastic. They're all the people that currently live in the city or close to the city or in the suburbs or somewhere that live in a condo in a small place so that they can be close to work. COVID happened. Everyone works from home now. And by the way, I believe that to stay like that. It's going to be back to some degree, but not all the way to what it's not. Nobody's going to flip a switch and say like, hey, COVID is over. Come all back into the office now. Yeah. No, people have gotten used for a full year to work at home.
And employees, I've actually seen numbers actually stay up in their production. So they're saving on commercial real estate as well. That's the reality.
Exactly right. So 100%. But also what it gives them is freedom. They now don't need to live within 10 miles or 20 miles from the property anymore, from the company anymore. They can move out and get those 5 acres outside of town where they can have a horse and some goats and three sheep or whatever they want to have, where the kids can play around without being afraid of other people, where they can enjoy like a larger footprint, and then perhaps commute that 1 hour into town once or twice a week. Because yes, people will have to come back to the offices, but not 5 times a week. They'll go back twice a week now, right? So, and many more people are willing to commute an hour into town once or twice a week than do that every day of the week. So now lots of people, they move to smaller towns, they move into the rural areas. It's this huge development during COVID. Again, but they don't want to be in the middle of nowhere. They want to be close to town so they can go, the kids can still see their friends, they can go into different things and so on and so forth. So that's one. And the third kind of property we're focusing on is actually the one in the rural areas, but the larger property. I'm talking 10 acres plus. We coined the term like mini ranch, right? They want to perhaps have something like that. That's typically not for people to live on long-term, but it's for the weekend fun. It's all the people who have an ATV, RV, dirt bike, kayak, canoe, like an RV kind of in their driveway, and the outdoors people that beeline out of town on the weekends to go have fun. Well, they want their own place. And there's huge demand for these kind of properties from the fun-loving outdoors kind of people.
So like cottages and all those sorts of areas outside, like on the outskirts.
Yeah. When I go, we live in Phoenix, Arizona. Northern Arizona has skiing in winter, hiking in summer, lakes, dirt bikes. It's open country. So what happens is, and it's 2,000 feet, it's 7,000 feet elevation in some areas. So it's much cooler than the 110 degrees that we have here. So what happens when we in summer escape for the weekend up to Sedona or Flagstaff or any one of these beautiful places, when we escape out of the heat here, it's a beeline of SUVs and pickup trucks with trailers on there and dirt bike, quad, kayak, RVs, trailers, campers, everything. It's like the interstate is packed on the way up there. There's these people have money. These people have money. They're executives. They make good money. They pay for all this stuff, probably monthly payments, and they want to have a place up there. They don't just want to go for the weekend and be in a campground. They want to have their own space. So again, what kind of land? Not land is created equal. Those are the three pieces of land we focus on because we know how to market them. Each of them have millions of buyers lined up that you can flip them to very quickly, and therefore it becomes a cookie cutter system.
I love it. So at 1,000-foot level, Jack, help the listeners understand, because some of us may or may not, and if my listeners are tuning in, they're familiar with wholesaling. We've had more or less, a signing of a contract on an actual physical property. When it comes to land, can you talk to us about the different types of, you covered where the opportunity is, where the demand is with respect to the land, but when it comes to buying land, who owns these vacant, how do I know if this is actually owned by, is it by the city? Is it by the state? How do I know who's in control of that land in order for me to get control of the contract so that I can flip it?
Yeah. So what we do is we very simply, most of these land is owned by average people around the country and around the world, right? It's private land, right? You won't buy state land. You won't buy land from the state or from the city or things like that. All the land is owned by private people. It's the state. They have to go through a bidding process and to things like that. It's too convoluted. You'll never see the end of it, and you'll never be successful on that. But
I guess my question is for our listeners: how do I know which land is which?
Right. Yeah. So what we do is very simple. We go to data sources or to the county, and there's data services like data tree, core logic, and so on, where you can do a search. You can say, give me all the land that's worth between $5,000 and $100,000 that is in this county, in this area, and then it pulls it out, and then you can sift through those. And if it's owned by the state of whatever it is by the state of Illinois, then you kick it out. And if it's owned personally, then great. Then you see who the owner is. All this data
what's the indicator? Does it literally say owned by the state? Just so for those who may not have seen the information you're talking about.
Yes. So this is actually a key point that you're touching on, and that is the reason why this works so well in the United States is that the data of who owns a property, what did they buy it for, when they buy it for, what's this assessed for today, what's the size of it, all this different, what's the legal description, all this data is actually public information in the United States. That is mind-blowing on its own, because in Germany, where I'm from, it's not. You can't find it. This is kept, only the owner has access to the data, nobody else has. So this is public information here. So what you can do is you can literally download, in some counties, like in Florida, they even have the data for free. You download the data, the entire database from the county, and you go through, and there's a field that says owner name. Owner name, and who is that? Smith, owner first name, Julie. Next one, state of Florida. Okay, well, if the owner's name is state of Florida, you kick that one out. But if the one says Smith or Miller or whatever it is, then or Bosch, like me, Jack Bosch, then you keep them in, right? And then you sort by the different things you want to sort, and by our criteria, and then you send them a direct letter that basically says we have fine-tuned to the exact wording that got the best results, but in essence, basically invites them to call you back to see if they want to talk about that property.
Fascinating. What do you think are some of the, talked about, this is, you're just stepping into kind of our world for our marketing guys. We talk about the language, you talk about solving a problem. We get so many stimulants these days from all over. How do you stay relevant, or how do you, how do you hook them? Is there a strategy that you've used that you've seen? Again, maybe our network can tap into yours when it comes to that offline, but for our listeners who are currently listening, is there anything that comes to mind, or mistakes that people typically do when it comes to like reaching out? Because we get hit every day, right?
Yeah. So on the purchasing side, not so much. It's a very, like, you use our materials if you just get the deals coming in. On the selling side of things, that's where it turns a little bit more into an art. But I mean, there's where obviously we give our students very clear direction of exactly what to do. But if you have marketing knowledge, it's it is actually it's a very good gift to have there, because what most people do wrong is that they put the wrong pictures of the land up there. So they're actually, well, here they're actually selling the wrong thing. So in other words, I always say, even though technically we sell land, what we're really selling is not land. What we're selling is the dream of a dignified retirement to a future retiree. The property just needs to meet the minimum standards for him to be able to implement his dream, right? To the new homeowner or to a future homeowner, we're selling the infill lot, or to developer, he's the most transactional of them all. He runs the numbers, and if the deal makes sense, he buys it, right? But then the RV person, we're showing them a place, we're selling them a place to have fun on, right? And what is more important than the land is actually what's around the land. So if there's a lake, where half of our marketing talks about the lake. Half of our marketing talks about the little town close by that has this really nice Western steakhouse there that you feel like you're in the 19th century still. And then, and half of our marketing talks about, half of our marketing talks about what that you can ski in winter, that you can hike in summer, that there's wonderful trails and things like that. And then only then do we talk about, oh yeah, and by the way, the property's 10 acres and it has rolling hills and it's a beautiful property. Because the property is important, but what's more important is that they can fulfill their dream, right? In there. So it's dream building what you do. And lastly, also the one in the outskirts, the COVID buyer, it's the same thing. You tell them that, hey, you want to be close to the city, but you want to have space. You're like, it's close to interstates, whatever is 54 or 93 or whatever the area you might want to be in. It's close to exit to the interstate. It's close to, there's a Walmart 5 minutes away, right? There's this town with gas stations and shopping another 5 minutes away. But within 35 minutes, you're back in town at your job. All right. Now, with that said, they have been able to check off the boxes of what they want. Now, the property is just one of those boxes. What everyone does wrong is they focus on just that box. They show the picture of the street, the dirt, the thing. Nobody wants to buy dirt. So no, everyone wants to buy something that they can build out of that dirt. Yeah, we're building a dream, and that's why we're selling.
So good that you said that, because a lot of people sell the features, not the benefits of anything. I think that's marketing, right? Like, what problem are you solving? And it goes back to knowing who your avatar is, right? Yeah, I think I love how you talk about that. Do they have kids? What do they look? What are their activities? Where do they live? How much money do they have? Like, all these, you gotta know your avatar. And so this is the reason why I love having guys like you step in, because if you're really listening, the blueprints are there and applied in different verticals, but they're very, very the same. Persistence, knowing your customer, systems. I mean, it's just refreshing to hear and having it here reinforced. So speaking of reinforcement, and I know you've given so much value over the hour that we've already had, which is incredible, because I was just listening and just getting all this knowledge. So thank you so much. But I want to go back. You've had a lot of experience, and we couldn't even unfold everything in 18 years. But one thing that stuck out to me was the 3 years. And I think that's the reason I want to highlight that, is because I really want our listeners to really resonate with the process of attaining a goal and the success that you've had. It certainly wasn't overnight, and it took the persistence. And I'm really passionate about that. And I know our listeners are too. So when you look back, I always like to say that, save people money, save them energy, or money, energy, and help them get to where they want to get to faster, right? So in hindsight, in those 3 years, or in the beginning stages where you're not getting as much traction, what is the thing where you put a palm to your face like, gosh, I should have just done that? Is there something that sticks out to you, whether it's in the business, at home, mindset wise? Is there something you would tell yourself 30 years back that would really help rocket fuel you even more now that you have acquired all this knowledge through as a practitioner?
Well, the one thing that we now do that we weren't able to do back then because there was nobody around was every time we pick up something new, we find the best person in the world that we can find for that, and we pay them whatever fee they charge to be coached by them, right? So when we started picking up, but back then we couldn't do that because there was nobody teaching land flipping. There were probably 10 people in the country that on their own had basically figured out the same thing that we had figured out, and they were doing deals out there. And after a while, we come across each other occasionally, but just we come across each other like websites and things, but we knew about each other, but there's nobody else doing this. So this, to this day, even this is this still is the only kind of method in real estate that's almost competition free. There's a few pockets in the US where you might come across 5, 10, 15 other students that do that, or people that do that. But most of the country, you're the only per game in town, because you go to any kind of RIA, Real Estate Investor Association, there's 150 people flipping the houses, and there's you as the only land flipper there, right?
Why is that?
Because
let's talk about that.
People even diss land. They tell, because the misconception about land, when people hear land, what they're thinking is land development. And land development, it takes a long time, is expensive, is a lot of bureaucracy, and is also because of that risky. Because if you get stuck with the wrong piece of land at the wrong time, you might lose that, right? Like in 2009, I mean, everyone lost, most people lost time. We didn't lose anything in 2009. We cruised right through because land was continued to be done, and we continue to do deals. But when people hear land, they hear the $1 million piece of lot next to the ballpark that you can develop into a high rise, and that's going to be $100 million thing. They're like, oh my God, that's way too complicated for me. But what we do is we take $500,000 to $200,000 pieces of land, and we just basically flip them like the house flippers flip houses. But why do they don't do it? Again, they think it's hard and it's expensive. Nobody else there's no HD TV show about it, right? There's no TV show that's like flip my lot, because what am I gonna see? Me sitting on my computer, doing some deal analysis and making some offers, right? And perhaps picking up the phone occasionally to renegotiate a deal with the seller, or picking up the phone occasionally and then talking to my team, which sits in the Philippines and does deals for me and does creates listings for me. There's nothing to see, because in essence, and in the best sense of the word, it's boring. And boring is actually a wonderful thing, as Warren Buffett said. In business, you don't want excitement, because excitement usually means trouble, right? In business, you want predictability. You want boring, and you want the ability to outsource things. But back to your main question, to your other question, like what we would do is find a coach. Because now, for example, when we started into apartment complex, because we use cash, land flipping is our cash machine. Again, going back to our philosophy is that in order to build big wealth, you got to have something that fuels that wealth, right? And you got to have something that produces the cash in order to invest into these other things. Now, could you just put a deal together and get a little percentage of it and get better and better and better at that? Yes, you can do that too, but it takes a long time also. But we prefer actually just figuring out one thing, and that the one thing, be really, really good at that. And for us, it's land flipping. And then take that money and roll it into other asset classes. But before we went into multifamily, guess what? We needed a coach, right? So we found a great guy. He allowed us to team up with him. He taught us a bunch of stuff. We had to raise those 60% of the money. We had to raise like almost $1 million for that deal. It was a smaller deal, like a $3.5 million deal. And had to raise the money. So we had never raised money, because in land flipping, you don't need to raise money. Like if you buy a property if you put a property that's worth $30,000 on a contract for $4,000, and you flip it for $15,000 the next week, doing what's called a double closing, where the buyer's money is used to fund everyone, you don't need any money to do this. You just made $11,000 or so on this deal without using any money. So that's how we built our business, without having any bank relationships, without having anything, but we figured it out. He told us how to raise money. We had those conversations, we raised money. We have a very good reputation, so people trusted us. And now that deal happened, and everyone is going to make a really, really good return when the deal sells, probably later this year. So, but we hired a coach. When we thought for a while we wanted to go into something else. So we hired a coach, paid the coach, only to then realize halfway through the process with them that really we don't feel passionate about that business model. So we abandoned it. And the way I see it, the coach was worth every single penny, because he saved us from a business that we otherwise would have not enjoyed.
Oh, that's so good. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, because it's so important. And again, another gem. I'm not surprised with how far you've come. Look, before I leave you, and you leave our audience with so much value. First of all, I want to give a plug to all the wonderful areas where they can stay in touch with you. But I gotta ask you, now that you've gotten to this stage, you talked about generational wealth building, excuse me, in the beginning. And you've gone, obviously, I love how you use the land flipping as the money generator to pour into different asset classes. Which one would you say is your favorite from a wealth accelerator when you have that one source of income that can come quickly? Again, depending on who our listeners are, it can come from your businesses, maybe high income. What is your favorite asset class in real estate now that you've been in the game in a lot of different umbrellas?
So once you already have the cash machine, right? Once you already have the cash machine, we do like a lot multifamily, like multifamily apartment complexes. Just because there's so much change in the world, and there's again, office space was considered to be the safest thing in the world. Well, guess what? COVID changed that. I mean, the people who have office space, they got their rents paid because all these big corporations have 5-year contracts and they continue paying their rent. So they came to office space unscathed. But will office change once everyone is downsizing their space, once their leases expire? Is Google not needing 5 million square feet anymore, but perhaps only 2.5 million square feet, right? Yeah, so that's going to be, and I'm making this millions of square feet, this number up, of course, but is there going to be like a 2.5 million square feet vacancy, which is going to drive rents down for almost everyone in the area for at least probably 5 to 10 years until new businesses have absorbed that again? Yes, right? At the same time, in the United States, the population is increasing every single year, and we are becoming more and more a renter's country. We're becoming more and more a country. It used to be that 68% or 60s to 68% of the people owned their own house. It's shrinking. It's shrinking because wages are not keeping up with inflation. People don't have the savings. People don't qualify for the loans. Plus, also the millennials don't want to own often, or even the pre-millennials now. They don't necessarily, whatever the next generation is after the millennials, they often don't want to own. Or if they want to own, they unfortunately got hit by not just one crisis, but 2 crises already on their way up. And they don't have the money to buy something right now. And then the baby boomers are actually doing the reverse. They need to cash out of their houses to finance their retirement. So they're becoming renters. And so we are moving towards a country where I believe within the next 10 or 20 years, probably 20 years, we'll be at 60% renting and 40% owning, which is pretty much what it is in Europe. So we're moving towards that kind of thing, even if it's much slower. But if you just take the other factor, population growth, like we're continuing to grow as a country, right? We're continuing to grow our population, and all those people need to live somewhere, and that's not going to go away no matter what population hits. Are we going to be hit with moratoriums on evictions and all these kind of issues? Yes. But potentially over time, again and again, as more crises hit, but people still need to live somewhere. And so as a result, that's what we focus on, because to us, it's the safest asset class. Because one thing is for sure, after working my butt off for 18 years to create the wealth, I don't want to lose it again.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I love that mindset. I hope you guys are listening. It's all about, before Jack and I went on the air, we talked about who is the avatar, and you guys know Experiment Nation. It's all about finding that one thing, sticking with it, going deep, right? Experiment broadly first, get an idea of what's going on, then dive deep and let that be, right? Like create that one, fast income generating, right? That you can pour into then investment opportunities in different asset classes, if you will. You could see that there's a proof of concept right here in front of us. Now, if you'd like to touch base and be in touch with Jack, I want to give Jack an opportunity, but I would definitely want to give him his plug that he deserves. He has a best-selling financial literacy book called Forever Cash, and he also is the creator of the Land Profit Generator, which if you aren't sold by now, then I guess that's just up to you. But he has this proof of concept, and he said when he was starting out, he didn't have that person. And we know the importance of investing ourselves in knowledge, but then in coaches and in practitioners who have done things of where we'd like to get to. So you do have that opportunity. And Jack, if I've missed anything, where else more can the people plug into what you're actively doing today?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to go to the website landprofitfun.com, like fun, like having fun, landprofitfun.com. And also we have coming up, it's going to be a little bit from now, a few weeks. So you can start at Land Profit Fund, but also in a few weeks, we have coming up something that we call a masterclass, which is actually a 9-day, it's for 5 days, but then we usually go give extra sessions because there's so much, people want to know so much more. But officially for 5 days, we're going live in a Facebook group every single day of the week. And you can register for the next one already under the website landprofitmaster.com. So you can go there, register there, and it's free. It's 100% free. And on Land Profit Fun, you can also watch some free videos and things like that.
Those are great domains, by the way. That's a hell of a domains that you got there. Good for you. Well, we'll make sure we include that in the show notes. If you're driving, keep your hands on the wheel. That will all be included, and we'll make sure you plug into Jack Bosch's ecosystem. It's proven. It's obviously allowed him to be where he's at today and live beyond the luxury plan, which you've talked about in the beginning. So thank you, Jack, for coming on. And just like that, we are out.